After 20 years in counterintelligence, you learn to see the world not as a home, but as an operational environment. For 34 days, I had been tracking an internal threat. I watched from the pre-dawn darkness of my study window, a mug of black coffee warming my hands, my focus absolute. This calculated breach of federal law detonated a full-blown sting operation that left a corrupt politician's wife in handcuffs. Before we dive in, which country are you watching from? Comment down below. On the street below, a figure emerged, wrapped in a gaudy lavender bathrobe that screamed suburban royalty. Karen, the HOA President. She moved with an arrogant entitlement, her slippers whispering against the asphalt as she made a direct path to my mailbox. She didn't hesitate. Her hands, adorned with glittering rings, yanked open the mailbox door and rifled through the contents with the practiced ease of a career criminal. She pocketed several envelopes before snapping the box shut and continuing her stroll, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on her face. She thought she was stealing junk mail. She had no idea she was interfering with federally protected correspondence from the Department of Veterans Affairs. She believed her position made her untouchable. She was about to learn what happens when you target a man who dismantled entire enemy networks for a living. My old commanding officer used to say, "Amateurs confront, professionals document." My entire career was built on that principle. After 2 decades as a U.S. Army counterintelligence special agent, my retirement was supposed to be an escape from a world of constant threat assessment. I hunted spies. I specialized in identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities in hostile organizations. The tools of my trade weren't guns. They were statutes, protocols, and the beautiful predictability of human corruption. I chose this quiet neighborhood to finally find peace, but I brought a lifetime of strategic acumen with me. The community saw me as a quiet, disciplined veteran. They respected me, but kept their distance. They had no idea my version of mowing the lawn included conducting regular threat assessments of my own property. So, when my mail first began to show discrepancies, I didn't see an inconvenience. I saw an anomaly that demanded immediate investigation. My training kicked in automatically. I ruled out postal error with methodical precision and quickly identified the recurring variable: a human actor operating with intent. The enemy had changed from foreign agents to a domestic tyrant, but the tradecraft remained the same. My next step was to understand her command structure. That structure was a petty dictatorship run from a podium at the tense monthly HOA meetings. Karen ruled with an iron fist, publicly shaming an elderly resident over the length of his grass, while her husband, a slick city councilman, watched from the back of the room like a silent partner. Theirs was a symbiotic corruption. Through discreet inquiries, I discovered Karen's system. She used the HOA as a personal enrichment scheme, collecting kickbacks from a network of approved vendors for everything from landscaping to roofing. Mail theft was her intelligence-gathering tool, a way to find leverage, financial distress, or any other weakness she could exploit to keep the residents in a state of fear and compliance. Her husband, in turn, would fast-track zoning permits for developers who exclusively used Karen's preferred, overpriced contractors. The HOA wasn't a community organization. It was their personal slush fund and political power base. But what the other residents didn't know was that her greatest tool was about to become her undoing. At the next meeting, I made my first move. I didn't accuse or shout. I waited for the open forum, stood, and calmly asked a procedural question about the HOA's financial transparency and the date of its last independent audit, citing a specific bylaw from the charter. A wave of silence fell over the room. Karen's plastic smile faltered. Her husband's eyes narrowed. For the first time, someone had challenged her authority not with emotion, but with her own rule book. I had just confirmed my status as a primary target. My office, once a quiet space for reading, now resembled a command center. I wasn't just angry, I was building a federal case file. I created a detailed dossier, cross-referencing every HOA bylaw with state property codes, and most importantly, federal law. That's where I found the kill shot. 18 U.S. Code, paragraph for 1708. Theft or receipt of stolen mail matter. A non-negotiable federal statute that would override any local influence Karen or her husband thought they had. It was the legal equivalent of a tactical nuke. I began cataloging every piece of evidence with military precision. Time-stamped, high-definition footage from my legally placed security cameras, a sworn log of every missing mail item, and signed affidavits from other neighbors whom I discreetly interviewed, documenting years of Karen's abuse. Then, I made the call. Not to the local police, who I knew were tangled in the city council's political web, but directly to the United States Postal Inspection Service. I navigated the phone tree and connected with a senior inspector. I didn't complain. I presented a case. I am reporting a suspected, ongoing violation of Title 18, Section 1708, I stated, my voice flat and professional. I have a complete digital and physical evidence package ready for your immediate review. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The inspector, a man whose voice carried the weight of decades of federal law enforcement, was clearly impressed. A meeting was scheduled. It was in that moment the power dynamic shifted irrevocably from a neighborhood squabble to a federal investigation. The federal government was now loading the weapon. All I had to do was convince Karen to pull the trigger. As expected, she struck back. Unnerved by my question at the meeting, she unleashed the full force of the HOA. Bogus violation notices began appearing on my door daily, citing non-existent infractions. Her husband leaned on the city, dispatching code enforcement to my property to measure the height of my flagpole, the one flying the American flag, claiming it was out of compliance. They were clumsy, brutish attempts at intimidation. My response to each attack was emotionless and legally precise. I refuted every single violation in formal writing, citing the specific bylaws that proved my innocence and her malfeasance. My final response was sent via certified mail, with a copy forwarded to a lawyer, formally putting her on notice for a pattern of targeted harassment. She was accustomed to emotional, terrified reactions. My cold, procedural defense was driving her into a rage. In a final fit of uncontrolled fury, she made her biggest mistake. She authorized an HOA-contracted tow truck to illegally remove my legally parked pickup truck from the public street. I didn't intervene. I simply stood on my porch and recorded the entire incident on my phone, capturing every detail of the illegal tow. She thought it was a show of power, her final humiliating checkmate. In reality, she had just given the U.S. Attorney's Office probable cause for an even wider investigation. I filmed the tow truck as it drove away. The sting was scheduled for 0600 tomorrow. The morning air was still and cold. The bait letter, a standard business envelope containing nothing but a greeting card and a GPS micro tracker, was in place. At 0611, Karen took it. In the unmarked federal vehicle down the street, a laptop screen lit up. The inspector's voice crackled over a secure radio channel. "Tracker is mobile. Target is compromised. We are a go." The takedown was brutally swift. 2 inspectors, clad in official jackets, moved with an efficiency that was terrifying to behold. They converged on Karen's porch just as she was tearing open the envelope. "Ma'am," the lead inspector said, his voice like iron as he displayed his badge. "You're under arrest for violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1708. Her protests were a pathetic spectacle. "I am the HOA President. I know the city councilman," she shrieked, her face a mask of arrogant disbelief. The inspector's stare was flat and unimpressed. "That doesn't give you the authority to commit a federal felony. Turn around." Neighbors emerged from their homes, their phones instantly out and recording. The queen of the cul-de-sac, the tyrant who had ruled their lives with petty fines and public humiliation, was being put in steel handcuffs on her own porch. The arrest triggered a federal search warrant. Inside her home, investigators found bags of mail from dozens of other residents, a treasure trove of stolen information. The case had just exploded. This wasn't a single count of mail theft anymore. It was a massive criminal conspiracy. The inspector turned to me, handing me his card. "Your dossier was perfect," he said. "The U.S. Attorney's Office is now very, very interested." The queen had fallen. Now it was time to burn her castle to the ground. The fallout was a controlled demolition. Karen was indicted on multiple federal felonies, facing years in a federal prison from which her husband's local influence could offer no protection. Her mugshot was plastered across the evening news. I delivered my final, comprehensive intelligence dossier on the HOA's financial crimes to an investigative journalist, and the resulting media firestorm was biblical. The federal investigation into the mail theft quickly uncovered the massive embezzlement scheme within the HOA. The entire board resigned in disgrace. The state was forced to step in, dissolving the corrupt entity and placing it into receivership. Her husband, implicated in the kickback scandal, lost his city council seat in a landslide of public outrage, and now faces his own federal investigation. The entire corrupt enterprise was systematically dismantled. At a special community meeting, the residents, free for the first time in years, moved to form a new, transparent HOA. They nominated me for president. I respectfully declined. "My job is done," I told them. "I'm not a ruler. I'm just a neighbor." My war was over. I had restored peace and order. Now I sit on my porch in the quiet morning light. The mail is delivered safely. The neighborhood is at peace. I finally have the retirement I earned. They say a man's home is his castle, but a castle is only as strong as its walls, and in this neighborhood, the walls are now protected by federal law. Tyrants only hold power as long as good people do nothing. They just forgot to check the service record of the one man they decided to provoke.